Hey, what's up, Internet? As you can probably tell by looking at the screen, this video is going to be a little bit longer than the rest of my videos usually are. And that's because I really wanted to cover this story in depth, because I think it deserves to be covered to the full extent. So, this time, I really have come prepared. So, recently there was a video of Kate Bolden of CNN talking about a Syrian boy named Omran Daqneesh, who was involved in a bombing that he was severely burned. He had a scar on his eye and everything, and she got a little emotional, and when I first heard about it, I did too. And if I was recording this at the same time that I was recording that clip into my video, you would see me bawling my eyes out right now. So let's just play that clip, I guess.
Freedom or starting school for the very first time. They're talking about superheroes. They're talking about playground slides. But in other places, they're dying. They're surviving. And many somewhere in between. According to activists, this is Omran. He lives with his mom, his dad, and his brother and his sister. Their home is inside Aleppo, Syria. It was hit by a bomb, an airstrike. Who's behind it, we do not know. He and his family were pulled alive from what's left of their home after being buried in the rubble.
So, yeah, this clip has been added in after I watched the video. I mean, I've already seen it, but I edited it into my video and just watched it. And that's hard to watch, man. Get you a little teary-eyed. And then I saw a Time magazine report that referred to Omran as Aleppo boy, and I, like, what the fuck? Like, really? It was titled "Brother of Aleppo Boy in Ambulance Dies," which means that his brother Ali Daqneesh is now dead, and it's really sad, and it kind of makes me tear up a little bit. But I think we need to use this story to shine a very dark light that needs to be shed on the war in Syria. Now, I will be reading a report by BBC News. So, the first thing that happened when this war started was pro-democracy protests erupted in March 2011 in the southern city of Dira. Side note, I will probably be pronouncing a lot of things wrong. After the arrest and torture of some teenagers who painted revolutionary slogans on a school wall. After security forces opened fires on demonstrators, killing several, more took to the streets. The unrest triggered nationwide protests demanding President Assad's resignation. The government's use of force to crush the dissent merely hardened the protesters' resolve. By July 2011, hundreds of thousands were taking to the streets across the country. Opposition supporters eventually began to take up arms, first to defend themselves and later to expel security forces from their local areas. The government's use of force to crush the dissent merely hardened the protesters' resolve. By July 2011, hundreds of thousands were taking to the streets across the country. Opposition supporters eventually began to take up arms, first to defend themselves and later to expel security forces from their local areas. So further elaborating, the BBC report said, violence escalated and the country descended into civil war as rebel brigades were formed to battle government forces to control their cities, towns, and the countryside. Fighting reached the capital Damascus and second city of Aleppo in 2012. Aleppo is where Omran and Ali are from. By June 2013, the UN said 90,000 people had been killed in the conflict. By August 2015, that figure had climbed to 250,000, according to activists and the UN. The conflict is now more than just a battle between those for and against Mr. Assad. It has acquired sectarian overtones, pitching the country's Sunni majority against the president's Shia Alawite sect. And drawn in regional and world powers, the rise of the jihadist group Islamic State, IS, has added a further dimension. The conflict is now more than just a battle between those for and against Mr. Assad. It has acquired sectarian overtones, pitching the country's Sunni majority against the president's Shia Alawite sect. And drawn in regional and world powers, the rise of the jihadist group Islamic State, IS, has added a further dimension. They continue. A UN Commission of Inquiry has evidence that all parties to the conflict have committed war crimes, including murder, torture, rape, and enforced disappearances. They have also been accused of using civilian suffering, such as blocking access to food, water, and health services through sieges as a method. So that's a really big deal. That's fucked up. The UN Security Council has demanded all parties end the indiscriminate use of weapons in populated areas, but civilians continue to die in their thousands. Many have been killed by barrel bombs dropped by government aircraft on gatherings in rebel-held areas, attacks when the UN says may constitute massacre. IS has also been accused by the UN of waging a campaign of terror. It has inflicted several punishments on those who transgress or refuse to accept its rules, including hundreds of public executions and amputations. Its fighters have also carried out massive killings of rival armed groups, members of the security forces, and religious minorities, and beheaded hostages, including several Westerners. Judging from this and President Assad's Wikipedia page, there's some information I've gathered, and it seems to be that this is a war caused by civilians who are protesting against President Assad, who is an authoritarian dictator. Whether he admits it or not, his Wikipedia page actually says that he denies those claims. But they seem like they're kind of making it worse because it's a well-known fact that the government that they are fighting against does incite violence against people who protest them. And so, if you think about all that, you think, oh, well, the logical thing to do would be to flee to a country like the United States, a free country that practices democracy, right? Wrong.
Conference at the G20 summit. She then lectured everybody on how we have to accept Muslims as well as Christians, or we're all just a bunch of bigots.
When I hear folks say that, well, maybe we should just admit the Christians but not the Muslims, when I hear political leaders suggesting that there would be a religious test, that's shameful. That's not American. That's not who we are.
By the way, can anybody tell me who is it? He says political leaders suggesting that there should be a religious test for these refugees. We should admit the Christians, not the Muslims. Who said that? Do you know anybody who said it? Well, I can't think of anybody who has. You know, I wish he would name names when he starts alleging all of these bigots are out there.
It's a bad idea if there's no screening, and I for one think that we should take every Christian Iraqi and every Christian Syrian.
You know, bringing people into this country from that area of the world, I think, is a huge mistake.
There is no basis right now for us to have a wholesale admission of Syrian refugees when we just don't have any way to vet them.
That's just crazy. We should not be allowing Syrian Muslim refugees into America.
I call it extreme vetting. I call it extreme vetting.
See, but that's the problem with these statements. We already have extreme vetting. In fact, they used to broadcast it on Fuel TV before it shut down in 2013. It can take up to 18 months to go from refugee status to citizen status. That's more than a year. If we're going to be giving out bullshit statistics like the Republicans seem to be doing in this situation, 62% of American citizens will have two parents who both had a birthday in the time that it takes to become a citizen of the United States from the refugee program. And you can't dispute those facts because no one's actually looked into it and done the research to see if it's true. But an argument that you'll often hear made is that we should only let Christian refugees in, which is, quite frankly, bullshit. Saying that there aren't Muslims in Syria trying to escape an authoritarian dictatorship is about as backed up as saying all Christians believe gays should be stoned to death. It's just founded in nothing. Syrian refugees are already screened for terrorist ties. So if your argument is that we shouldn't let any in until we get a process instilled to screen them for terrorist ties, problem solved. We already do that. So now I guess you can stop making your argument. If we elect a man like Donald Trump, who much like the other Republicans are using coded language to basically say that they're not going to let any Syrian refugees in, or as few as possible, we allow kids like Omran Daqneesh and Ali Daqneesh to die and suffer. I can't imagine anyone who would see the evidence of what is going on in Syria and want those people to live through that just because there might be someone who comes in who is a terrorist, which is extremely unlikely with all the vetting that we already have in place. To say that we need to put in more is insane, because the only thing that we could put in that we don't already have is a longer process to become a citizen. And after you've already done all the vetting and you're doing your test, I mean, that's about all that they can do, you know? That's the dog you've heard barking this whole time. Sorry about that. So that's going to be all for this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you like it. Let me know what you think. And also, if you're still watching this video, as always, I love you more than my emotionally detached personality will allow me to express, and that frustrates me deeply.